Today I'm reviewing the Sonos Sub 4 wireless subwoofer in black. If you want to check current pricing or availability, it's linked below. I've had this subwoofer connected to a Sonos system in my living room for a few weeks now, pairing it with a soundbar and stereo setup, so my impressions are based on everyday listening and real-world use rather than just specs. Let's set expectations early. This isn't a standalone speaker or a full surround sound system by itself. It won't produce stereo detail or mid-range clarity on its own. What it does is reinforce the low end for a Sonos sound system, whether that's a soundbar, a pair of Sonos speakers, or a fuller multi-room setup. Real-world response: once paired, the Sub 4 adds a noticeable layer of bass that you don't get from the main speakers alone. In movies, deeper scores and low rumbles feel fuller and more present. In music, bass lines have more weight and texture without sounding muddy. It doesn't shake the walls in a dramatic way, it's more about depth and presence rather than just volume. I paid attention to how it behaves at different levels. At moderate listening volumes, the low end feels balanced and controlled. At higher playback levels, it keeps bass tight rather than letting it become boomy or overwhelming. That's important in everyday use. You gain impact without unpleasant resonance or distortion in the room. Integration and ease of use: setting it up took a few minutes. Sonos app walks you through the pairing process, and it immediately calibrated the sub to the existing system. There's no physical wiring to the main speakers. That wireless connection is one of the practical advantages here. Once set up, the sub stays in sync with whatever you're playing without lag or dropouts. In daily use, you don't have to tweak crossover points or filters manually. The system automatically balances the sub with the other speakers. That reduces friction and lets you focus on content rather than settings. Room behavior and placement: room size and placement matter. In my mid-sized living room, the Sub 4 enriches bass without overpowering the space. In smaller rooms, that same effect will feel strong at lower volume because the low frequencies fill the space efficiently. In very large rooms, additional bass reinforcement or multiple low-frequency units might be worth considering. One subwoofer doesn't necessarily transform a large space on its own. Unlike traditional subwoofers with a ported box or exposed drivers, the Sub 4's design has a distinct look and feels intentionally engineered to minimize rattles or box noise. It stays steady even when pushed. Limitations and honest trade-offs: this isn't a subwoofer that competes with larger, dedicated powered subs that you'd see in custom home theaters with multiple drivers and huge cabinets. Those can produce very deep, room-shaking bass at high SPLs. The Sonos Sub 4 prioritizes integration and musical balance over raw output. If you're only upgrading from a basic soundbar and want clarity in dialogue and mids without low-end reinforcement, adding this subwoofer won't change the mid-range. Its purpose is strictly low frequencies. Also, this sub works best within the Sonos ecosystem. Pairing it with non-Sonos speakers requires extra adapters or workarounds that aren't how it's designed to be used. Within a Sonos setup, however, it feels seamless. This makes sense for. It's a good fit if you already use a Sonos soundbar or Sonos speaker setup, want fuller, richer bass without distortion or boominess, prefer a wireless subwoofer that integrates easily, value consistent room-filling low end with minimal fuss. It's less appropriate if you want the deepest possible home theater bass regardless of size or footprint, don't plan to stay within the Sonos ecosystem, only need a modest bump in volume without low-end focus. In practical terms, it behaves predictably and feels like a natural extension of the rest of the system rather than an afterthought. It doesn't suddenly make everything louder, but it makes low frequencies more present, controlled, and enjoyable. Check current pricing below and evaluate it against your needs.